Well. Here we are with confirmation that Guy Ritchie, the guy who made the live action Aladdin from 2019, is now making a live action adaptation to Disney's Hercules, the classic Disney story of a himbo simping for a woman who eventually falls in love with him. Now, I would be lying if I said I had any faith in the Disney live action movies being good at this point, and not just a nonsensical CGI fest, but here we are. Now, instead of taking low blows at a potshots at a story that makes me nervous, I would like to propose an idea on how this could work. Looking at some questions or quotations from the interviews, they have stated that the project will, quote, it will certainly pay homage to the original with a more modern spin on it. What Anthony and I love about the original is how funny and subversive it is. I think we try to embrace that sense of humor in the remake. Quote from, end quote, Joe Russo, the producer for the movie. Now, I'm not going to say that this sounds like a horrible movie or a horrible idea, though I am going to be very nervous because anything that says a modern spin on it kind of sets off red flags. But at the same time, just because a story has subversive beats to it, doesn't mean the actual story is any good, and it doesn't take away the importance of the fact that in Disney's Hercules, Megara, Phil, Pegasus, and Hercules had their character arcs, minus Pegasus, and how everybody played off each other really well. There was chemistry and there was good writing that made us like the characters, and that should not be undermined. Just because the story is subversive doesn't mean it's good if you have bad characters. But I digress. For some backstory on the original Hercules story, just because I have an idea, the original story is that Zeus slept with a human woman, Hera got mad and made Hercules prove himself to be a demigod by performing trials and tasks for her that involved killing a hydra, the Nemean lion, redirecting a river to clean out a dirty stable. It kind of goes all over the place. Things that proved that he knew how to use his real strength with brains. Now, with that out of the way, I do have an idea on a modern twist, but we'll see how that works, and you guys can critique it as best as you want. We start with the birth of Hercules. Zeus is there to bestow a gift of strength and perseverance onto Hercules after his birth to take care of his mother. This gift works by giving Hercules the power and means to overcome any challenge as long as he never gives up, but also lots of raw strength to compensate as well. Hera barges into the room, a lightning storm erupting in the sky around the house, to signify her wrath that her husband has undermined her godhood once again by having children with another mortal. She lays a curse of mortality on Hercules, hoping that the disease and plague that's sweeping the land will kill him as it has so many others, and allowing the disease to take care of him instead of her directly killing him. With a rage-filled scream, she bursts into a flash of lightning, and with a thunderous boom disappears and heads back to Olympus. Hercules' mother is nervous, but does what she can to actually take care and raise Hercules. Hercules does get the plague, but from Zeus's gift to be able to overcome anything that he sets his mind to, he is able to recover from the plague. As he grows up, not knowing his own strength, he is both a help and a hindrance to his community. He's clumsy like a panda with two crippled left legs, causing him to be helpful, but also a hindrance for construction sites. So at the beginning, he's able to help with laying down a foundation, bringing in stone from the quarry to town. However, to avoid any future incidents, he's only allowed to bring the stone from the quarry to outside the town and set it there, where they get oxen and whatever else to carry the stone the rest of the way to the building site, to avoid future accidents from the past. He's helpful to a point, but kept at a distance for fear of his power. Some claim his power is a curse from Hades from not dying from the plague as a child, and a curse on everybody else. Other people distance themselves just because they don't like the rumors that Hades cursed him. Tired of being seen as a brute with no name and nothing but strength, literally a man-shaped ox and a cursed child, his mother eventually confronts Hercules with the reality that he's the son of Zeus and needs to do more with his life. He goes to the temple of Zeus, and a storm of blue lightning crackles around the temple. Hercules converses with a statue of Zeus and is told that to reach his true potential, he needs to prove himself to the gods. Hercules agrees and goes into a training montage. While on a run during this training montage, he runs into Megara being captured by the River Guardian, similar to the cartoon. Hercules doesn't have a weapon, but fearing the worst, he charges in anyway. The River Guardian knocks him aside, telling him to mind his own business, and Megara also dismisses him. She says her famous line of,
I'm a damsel. I'm in distress. I can handle this. Have a nice day.
She then talks about the River Guardian for a bit, sassily taunting him for witty reasons that any normal person should be able to come up with to make it funny and a little bit comical, until he yells enough and that she will be his whether she wants to be or not. Hercules then rips off a tree branch and swings for the River Guardian's legs and knocks him over. He grabs Meg, Long jumps to the side of the riverbank, apologizes for getting her wet, and then jumps back and fights the River Guardian. After the fight, he returns to see her wringing out her dress and sandals still, unimpressed at this fight. Introductions: she calls him a musclehead for using a club instead of a refined weapon that a gentleman would use, like a sword, but she does thank him and then she leaves. Of course, he falls in love. We can't have that without this. And then he continues his training run. Later on, as he's preparing himself for some of his trials, he goes to the Temple of Zeus. A lightning storm crackles around, and Zeus tells Hercules that there is a Hydra that needs to be dealt with. Hercules prepares himself and leaves for the city looking for information on the Hydra. As he's there, Meg will run into the streets crying for help as the Hydra is attacking villagers near a statue of Perseus. Hercules runs out to fight the Hydra. When he gets there, the Hydra is smashing the statue of Perseus, but then the other spare head is also attacking villagers. Hercules attacks by slicing off some of the heads. We'll say that the Hydra starts with like 2 or 3. And then, of course, 2 heads take the place of the one that gets cut. And as Hercules keeps fighting the Hydra, Meg eventually yells at him to stop cutting off the heads since they are growing back. As Hercules hears this, he cuts off a head and pushes the stump into a nearby brazier of fire that a nearby restaurant was using outside to cook with. The flesh is seared, and the stump doesn't grow a head back. Meg, seeing this, starts lighting a torch and other braziers around the plaza while Hercules keeps fighting. She tosses him a torch and yells at him to burn the Hydra necks after cutting off the heads. Hercules takes notice of this, and eventually all but one head remains. This last head, with a noticeable spike on its head, claims that this head is immortal and cannot be severed or destroyed by human hands like the other heads. Hercules, just growing tired of this fight, jumps onto the Hydra's back and ties its last neck in a knot, proclaiming, "If I can't use force, then may hunger send you to Hades." After tying the Hydra's neck in a tight bunch of knots, he cuts off his legs and throws into the bay area as the Hydra breathlessly shrieks as it drowns in the bay. As the town people thank him, he singles out Meg and thanks her for her help with making the torch and pointing out the fire burning the severed heads trick. With a sassy retort, you could state something like, well, I guess even heroes need help now and again. Something like that. She leaves him, advising that she is a priestess of Hera and needs to return to her duties at the temple. They say farewell, and Hercules leaves for the temple of Zeus that he has been going to. He offers the severed heads of the Hydra that did die as an burnt offering to the gods at the temple altar. The story progresses for a while. Hercules gains more fame, and the statue of Zeus keeps congratulating him on what he's been doing. Fame starts to go to his head a bit because now, instead of a nameless cursed child that he was referred to back at home, he's now a celebrated hero. He also grows closer with Meg as they go on adventures together, and with her knowledge, being a priestess, helps him fight all the other mythical creatures. He stops burning spoils and trophies, though, to the gods after his fights, and eventually Meg scolds him for forgetting the gods. Surprised by this, he states that he is on the gods' errands and grows tired of being used as a puppet only to be cast aside and told that he did a good job without receiving anything helpful. He states that unless the gods tell him why he is how he is, he won't do anything more for them. Meg states that they'll offer one sacrifice together, specifically the Nemean lion, and the gods will have to respond. She states that they'll make an offering at a sacred temple for Hera that isn't used very often so that the conversation might be a bit more private. Hercules reluctantly agrees and kills the Nemean lion. Using a handcart, they take the lion to the temple Meg referred to, but as they get closer, Hercules remarks that the area is close to a temple of Zeus that he frequently goes to. Meg is taken aback by this and explains that this area is sacred to Hera and Hera only, and there shouldn't be a temple or mention of Zeus in the area. Hercules gets confused at this, but they continue onward. Hercules points out that what he sees is a temple of Zeus, while we see from Meg's perspective that the temple is actually a temple to Hera. After a heated argument over who is exhausted and who is correct, a lightning storm erupts around the temple and a wicked feminine laughter crackles like unstable lightning around the pair. Hera appears before them and exclaims, "Foolish imbecile, Did you truly think Zeus would pay attention to you out of all of his bastards? She slaps Hercules across the face, and from a perspective shot, we see his vision clear that the temple is indeed a temple to Hera. She cackles and explains that she's been the one talking to Hercules all this time, advising him to go on the trials with the intention of him being unprepared and dying during those trials, as his existence is a mockery of her godhood and place as the goddess of marriage and loyalty. How can she guide others to be faithful in their commitments if her own husband wouldn't do his own part in justifying her dominion? In her rage, she conjures a large cockatrice-type monster, but instead of a dragon and chicken, it's a mix of a dragon and a peacock to resemble how peacocks were her sacred animal. As Hercules fights, and Meg is safely pulled aside from harm due to her faithful service under the goddess's guidance, she does her best to plead that as the goddess of family, that it doesn't make sense for Hercules to die by her hand. Hera exclaims, "He's no son of mine, for my blood doesn't flow in his veins." Meg argues that adoption of families that remarry are still families under her watch and care. Hera argues that this is a notion lacking divinity. But before Meg can say anything else, and after hearing what sounds like blasphemy, a singular golden lightning bolt explodes into the fray where Hercules was losing his fight against the creature. The dust settles, and Zeus stands there, with a voice like thunder bellows for Hera to stop, later explaining, "You claim to not accept him, yet it was you who stated that for him to join us, he had to prove his divinity when others called for him to remain mortal and die, like the rest of our half-children." Zeus and Hera have some back and forth. Hercules gets the full story of his mother, Zeus being his father, and the gift Zeus gave him, and Hera's gift, and how she's been manipulating Hercules the entire time. Hera's hatred visually growing with the intensity of the blue lightning storm around the temple area. In a fit of crazy rage, Hera eventually erupts and lightning explodes off her in all directions, the twisting tendrils flying everywhere. As Hercules stands behind Zeus, Zeus takes the lightning with no problem. However, as Meg wasn't protected by a god, a stray bolt from Hera pierces Meg and she collapses. Hercules runs to Meg's side, and she struggles to breathe, but looks at Hera, feeling betrayed that the goddess she served after her husband cheated and walked away from her struck her down in a fit of rage. The goddess' faithfulness showing a side of infidelity to her own servants. Hera will look at Meg with a distasteful look and stride away, stating that Meg's fate was sealed for questioning the goddess's will. Meg dies with a look of shock and betrayal on her face. Hercules rages at Hera. His whole life he suffered for her sake, and by Hera's hand, she took away the one person who kept him grounded. As he runs and attacks Hera, she makes a sweeping motion with one arm and sends the mortal flying to the walls of her temple. She leaves in a flash of blue lightning. Zeus runs over and heals Hercules with a little bit of help. Zeus tells Hercules that if he wishes to save Meg, he needs to win her soul from Hades. Zeus shows Hercules where the nearest portal is to the underworld, and Hercules runs off to save Meg. Eventually, he makes it to Hades' throne room. Hades doesn't care, actually, and in fact scolds Hercules for killing the monsters he had sent. Little did Hercules know, but there is a cult for the Titans that lives in the city, and that Hercules had been protecting. The Hydra, the boar, the lion, and other animals and creatures Hercules had to fight were all Hades' will to stop the cultists from reviving the Titans. Hades and Thanatos leave the throne room, as they themselves will try to intervene to kill the cultists outright to prevent the Titans from reviving. Hercules is left in the throne room, crying as his fate again seems to have been sealed by his manipulative stepmother. Until, of course, Persephone comforts him. She tells Hercules of her story, of betrothal to Hades, and how she too hates the will of the gods, and how they treat the lives of others as inconsequential. She leads Hercules to an area of the dead and helps him find Meg. Afterwards, she advises on how to get Meg to come back to life. All she asks is that they reject the gods' will and live as they see fit, and live the happy life she never will. Hercules swears fealty to Persephone and saves Meg. As he saves Meg, he proves himself a god. They have a quick meeting, but are soon brought to a part of Olympus. Meg and Hercules are confronted by all the gods of Olympus, but they tell Hercules that now that he's a god, he can't stay in the presence of mortals for too long, and needs to take up his responsibilities as a god. Hercules outright rejects this offer and forfeits its godhood, stating that the gods do nothing but manipulate others for their own gain and will, and he doesn't want to be a part of this. He also calls out both Hera and Zeus for their hypocrisy and their flaws, and blames them for the life he has lived. He states that he wishes to live a simple, mortal life, and he will never be one of them. His godhood is stripped from him, and he and Meg are sent back to Earth together. But now Hercules is no longer has his godlike strength or power. He's just a regular man. After Meg asks what they do now, Hercules suggests that they become farmers, specifically pomegranate farmers. She questions his taste, but accepts the idea as they go on to live a simple life as farmers. Now, this is of course a rough idea, but imagine the modern twist where Hercules calls out Zeus for being unfaithful, Hera for tormenting Hercules for the circumstances of his birth that he didn't ask or actively take part in. He points out that the issues with their marriage caused death, suffering, and unnecessary amounts of grief on the mortal world and the people around them because they're misdirecting their anger and rage towards others instead of actually trying to work things out in their own interpersonal issues. Hercules commenting on how alone he felt being an only child and called cursed for his strength and his isolation came from his power. This could speak to many children and parents over many marriage issues that would have a modern twist, but would focus more on Hercules and Meg's relationship and build it up better, as well as focus on how Hera in the mythos was a wrathful, jealous woman, and call out Zeus for being an unfaithful husband, as well as both a distant and irresponsible father. In Hercules' stories, it could make sense and show that even if our parents weren't the best examples to us, that we can change and make our lives happy despite where we come from. Again, I know the story outline is rough, but if we want less CGI and a more grounded story with more respect to the mythos, then, in my opinion, with some editing and refinement, this could easily work to not only subvert expectations like the producers claim they want, but also have a more grounded overall story with a modern twist that actually speaks to modern issues and audiences. Now, again, this is a rough draft that I wrote in like 15 minutes, so yes, it's rough. It needs a lot of editing, a lot of writing, and a lot of better details worked out. However, I just think that this could work out decently well. Granted, I don't know what the final story will be, and with Disney's history of live-action remakes, I don't have a lot of hope for this. So while I was editing this video, I realized that I should clarify a few things. Now, I never mentioned Phil or Pegasus in the story outline that I wrote. That isn't me saying not to add them, it's just that I focused on an overall narrative that I didn't write them in the 15-ish minutes it took me to come up with the story outline. I'm not saying that we should pull a live-action Mulan and axe beloved characters. I'm just not getting paid to write out a full Hercules story, so a basic outline is all I'm doing. I also figured that if in the remake they want to be subversive, they could focus on the true problem being irresponsible parents and a messed up relationship. This would remove Hades as the villain in the story, but would be subversive by changing part of the message and letting people have two stories to compare the two with. One about finding your true self and understanding what heroism is, and then maybe having one focus on how children can surpass and heal from the issues their families start. By changing the focus on the moral of the story, it could be subversive that way, but have a healing, positive message that could have a real impact on how future generations and children grow up with this movie. Or it can be a disgrace to the source material, be divisive among fans, and labeled as one of the worst adaptations of the story anyone's ever seen. But what do I know? I'm a degenerate, no one asked, and I bid you good day.